Hey, folks, welcome back to the podcast. This is the Finch Show, and I am James Finch, where we're talking 3D printing, cosplay, and all things nerdy and rad. In this episode of the podcast, my guest is Michelle Waffle, who is a cosplayer, and I love the fact Marvel needs to give her an honorary PhD in X-Men because she is just like the encyclopedia, and I love it. I'm such a huge fan of the X-Men myself. I grew up with it, so I was really excited that we got a chance to sit down and talk. I'm going to stop talking about the episode and just get to the episode. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Michelle. So I have it. I got referred. We talked about this, but I got referred to you through the wonderful Brittany, aka Captain Britt. And so typically anything she tells me, I just flat out consider to be 100% true. I don't doubt her at all. But she told me that you are a certifiable X-Men nerd, which freaked me out beyond anything because it's like one of my favorite subjects to talk about, and it's so rare to find someone who's like a X-Men nerd as well, at least on that level. But so I gotta ask, all that being said, where did your, I guess, exposure and or love for X-Men begin?
Oh man, I think so. I feel like the exposure happened in '94. My brothers asked my mom if she would buy them those Flare Ultra X-Men trading cards. That was the big thing that was happening. And she went, and they didn't have a lot of male ones, so she ended up getting some female ones mixed in there. And my brothers were like, "Well, we don't want the girls, we just want the guys." So I said, "Well, I'll take them. These look interesting." And I remember specifically there was one really random female card that stood out to me. It was Saturn 9, which was like an evil clone version of Saturnine. And I remember reading her bio on the back, and I'm like, dang, this girl is she's vicious. It talked about her killing her clone and taking her spot. And I know it's a very obscure, very random character, but that is the one that I remember sticking out to me the most.
Mm-hmm.
And then my parents also bought my brother's comic books, and they weren't really readers, and I love to read. I love to read books, articles, anything. My brothers always used to tease me that I would just zone out reading anything. And I picked up an X-Men book, and I remember it specifically had Rogue and Gambit on the cover, embracing in this beautiful, loving pose. And I was reading it, and they were talking about how they couldn't really touch each other, so they couldn't fully be intimate with one another. And this story just intrigued me. I'm like, why can't they be together? What's happening here? And then cue the X-Men animated TV series premiering, and that is when I feel like I fell in love with the X-Men, because every Saturday morning I got up with my brothers. The theme song came on. One of my brothers used to jump on the couch pretending to be Wolverine. It was like a whole Saturday morning tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved those stories. They were so good. They just sucked me in.
Yeah, that was definitely the classic era of X-Men. And that's interesting to hear. We kind of come from the same period in time of exposure. Sometimes when you talk to X-Men fans, and there's all different degrees, you find out really quickly their angle on it depends upon where and they were originally exposed on what they consider to be their X-Men. So we're actually pretty close on that. So that's pretty, I remember those flare cards. I've actually, in my bedroom, I've still got the whole binder with Wolverine on the cover, and every single card is in there, because when I was I was the same age, and I remember my parents had a Sam's Club card, and you could go buy the whole box for $30 full of trading cards. And that was my birthday present one year. And then a nerd, you spend the next 2 days opening them all and, putting them in order and putting them in the binder. And yeah, that was the coolest thing in the world. That is fantastic. How the thing that I find really interesting about the X-Men is sort of like they have this like evolution over the course of time, no pun intended. That sort of like the different eras that they've gone through. Is that still that kind of era that you sort of identify with the most?
I think so. I just like the 90s were very iconic to me. I feel I loved all of the like big shoulder pads, the like puffy like side pieces, all of those belts with tons of pockets. Only for the guys though, none for the ladies. But those bright colors, I just I think that is the X-Men era that just really like stands out for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the one that I'm drawn to and I love the most. The current one too is also very interesting. So it's I fell out, gosh, maybe in like the 2000s. I know kind of the gist of what happens, but I was in college and other priorities. I was out like clubbing and like having fun with my friends, so I didn't really have time for comics. And then I got into it I don't know, maybe like 2015, 2016 I kind of got back into it, but the 90s are probably like the nearest and dearest X-Men for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially that my favorite, and I've always been a big fan of Jim Lee, like sort of like the Jim Lee era, like when he launched Volume Two, and I realized that amongst X-Men fans, there's a lot of controversy there between him supposedly forcing Chris Claremont out, um,
Mhm.
but definitely art wise, like I will still flip through those issues and just be like just like you were saying, to me that's X-Men. Not saying that other eras aren't X-Men, but as in terms of one that I personally identify with the most. And do you have a? I know this is a dumb question, but I'm asking anyway.
No
Do you
dumb questions.
have do you have an X-Men character that you would say is your favorite?
Well, I really love Jean Grey. I mean, she's my girl. Like I love how like powerful she is. I love that she was the only female on the team for so long. And then like I mean all of the 90s X ladies are badass. Like
Mm-hmm.
100%. Storm, Rogue, Jubilee, Psylocke, they're all just so great. But I feel like Jean Grey got that like extra like power boost once she became the Phoenix, and she just like totally like became even more badass,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that about
Yeah.
her.
Yeah, she there were the only issue that, and I did not like with her as a character. I love her as a character. Sometimes it would bother me in the animated series, like they didn't quite know how to use her, like they didn't know quite what to do with her in a lot of the scenes and a lot of the fights and stuff like that. But on the flip side, you ran into that a lot with Wolverine. I mean, I realized that like we got to the point where it was like cliche to say that Wolverine is my favorite character, but Wolverine is by far my favorite character. And I'll never forget when it started. When I was a kid, I had a next door neighbor who was slightly older than me, and he apparently had been getting, I don't know, a bunch of crap from his parents that he needed to grow up and stop being into kid stuff. So he gave me like 3 huge boxes of comic books from the 80s, and it was X-Men, it was
Oh,
Fantastic Four, it was Avengers. And I still to this day, I'll never forget the first comic book I ever read was Uncanny X-Men number 216. 1987, I believe, was the year that was published. And I knew nothing about the X-Men because this was prior to the cartoon. This is prior to all that stuff. I think at Marvel time, X-Men was like a tier 3 book. Like it wasn't even one of their best sellers or anything like that. And I just remember here's this character with like these claws and this crazy looking cowl, and he's like running through the woods like a savage, gets hit by a car, and just gets up and keeps running. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy is amazing. Now we fast forward how many decades later, and I have a son named Logan. So clearly that's something that stuck. But anyway, back to the point I was making. They kind of ran into that problem too with Wolverine in the animated series because like you can't have this guy with claws. Like the only thing you can fight are robots, right? Like you can't put him up against flesh and blood with his claws out because I mean it's a kids cartoon, right?
yeah, yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
I
the
think I think later on though, Wolverine and the X-Men came out, and I think that Wolverine really got his like time to shine.
mhm.
I feel like Wolverine and the X-Men, I think, gets overlooked a little bit because it only got one season, um, and it was a different take on the X-Men entirely. So I feel like he had a little, like animation-wise, he got a little bit more of a redemption arc
Mm-hmm.
there.
It was also a sign as to how popular the character had become that it went from being X-Men to Wolverine and the X-Men. It'd be like changing the name to John Lennon and the Beatles. Like,
Yeah,
it's no longer the
yeah.
Beatles.
That's a really great analogy.
Mm-hmm. What this is great to talk about with X-Men fans. What is I would say your favorite storyline from the books?
From the books. Uh, it's it's not like X-Men specific,
Okay.
so a little bit. So I really loved the story when Jubilee like left the X-Men and went and joined Generation X.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably like one of my favorite. I mean, that's my favorite series of all time. Like I love X-Men, but Generation X is really awesome. Um, but at the same time, like right after Generation X started, I want to say maybe like 6 issues in, all of the titles like totally like got revamped and it became the Age of Apocalypse.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So like that I think I was in gosh, maybe 4th grade or I'm not sure. I was young though. I remember I was in elementary school. I think because I was talking about this with some of my other like X-Men friend nerds. And I didn't know at the time that it expanded over all of the current titles. Like I had no idea. I thought it was just like I think Age of Apocalypse Alpha came out with the chrome cover, and then I was reading Astonishing X-Men and I think it was Amazing X-Men. Like I thought that was it at the time. I thought Generation X had been canceled. Like I'm like, where is my series that I usually pick up? I didn't see it. Years later I find out because we didn't have like the internet and Wikipedia and everything,
Mm-hmm.
that there was this entire like other story I missed, including my favorite Generation X characters being a part of. And Age of Apocalypse was just so wild to me. The fact that the son of Xavier went back in time, totally jacked everything up, killed his dad, basically wrote himself out of existence, and Apocalypse was like, "This is my time to shine," and he's just like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Mm-hmm.
And then how utterly like destructive he was and how things were just so bad during Apocalypse's reign, and he's like, "Yeah, this is what I love." And the X-Men are just they're like X-Men that are typically good are not on the good side, and X-Men that are typically considered bad guys have actually converted to the good side. And then seeing the ones in between, like I remember seeing Emma Frost, and she had a lobotomy, a partial lobotomy, so that she could be considered a human. And like knowing how like strong and like badass of a character she is, and for her to do something like that, like what happened?
Mm-hmm.
There's characters that are just like totally different. Like Dazzler's a smoker. Like, and Jean finally gets to be with Logan, and for
Yeah.
me, that's the ship that I love.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was cool how she was with Cyclops, kind of, and then she escaped and became this mercenary with Logan, and they developed a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
The Age of Apocalypse series that came after that, I'm not as much of a fan of, but the original run was really good. I loved it a lot.
Yeah, the original run was great, and I remember how I was like almost losing my mind trying to keep track of everything when those were coming out because you're right, the entire X universe changed. Like the Wolverine comic became what was it called?
Weapon X, I think.
Yeah, Weapon or Phoenix and Weapon X or something like that,
Yeah,
wasn't it? And I want to say
yeah,
like X Force or one of those became Gambit and the Externals. Like
yes.
they all switched titles for a while. It was a
Mhm.
great story, and I love especially the way they played the relationship up between Cyclops and Wolverine in that one. Wolverine was missing a hand because Cyclops shot it off, and Cyclops was missing an eye because Wolverine took it out.
Yeah, yeah, I like, and Cyclops was actually like more of a Cyclops because he only had one eye.
Right?
Like,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
worked. It worked. And how like Havoc was very unhinged. Like
Hmm.
he was like crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Oh my
love
god.
the I love Sabretooth in the Age of Apocalypse. Like all of a
Yeah.
sudden he
He
was
was
this
so
big,
nice.
muscular, like heart of gold guy with, Wild Child hanging out on his shoulder on a chain. And it was just
Mhm.
like, a thing I loved about that. So for those of you who are listening or are familiar with this, just like she said, Professor X gets killed back in time. So then we come to the current time of what would have happened if Professor X had never existed. And for all the history that's there, now all of a sudden you have like Magneto, who's the leader of the X-Men, who is like a
Mhm.
father figure to all these characters, who is trying so hard to keep it all together. Is trying so hard to just keep them alive and somehow find a way to win this war.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. You mentioned that was probably like one of my favorite storylines from the comics, and the art was just amazing. I think Joe
Oh my gosh,
Madura
yes.
was doing X-Men at the time. Yeah, because he did Alpha and Omega, and it was just, oh god, it was so good. Dang it! Now I got to go back and read all that. I got to go dig them all out and read them
There's
again.
an omnibus, and then there's like a companion omnibus as well for
Mm-hmm.
all those stories. Like I just picked them up myself. I think I got the companion a while ago, and then I just picked up the actual like omnibus for all of the original Age of Apocalypse story.
Do you ever find yourself doing that where you buy like omnibuses or graphic novels for like issues you already have just because you don't? It's easier than going and digging them out of bags and boards all the time.
Yeah, or I'm just like I'm missing a few issues here and there, but this omnibus has everything, so I could just, read it at my leisure. I
Mm-hmm.
also have a Marvel Unlimited account, so I could do it that way as
Oh
well.
yeah. The now I got out of, just like you were saying, probably about 5 years ago. I
Mhm.
stopped with the comics. Not love of the comics. I'd still read graphic novels, but in terms of like going to the comic book store every week or every month and picking up the new issues, I
Yeah.
stopped doing that. Is it worth getting back into? Is X-Men humming along right now?
I think it's definitely in a new era. Uh, I definitely suggest reading House of X and Powers of X. You can get those. I think they have an omnibus, and then they have like the graphic novels collected of each. It's a wild time for the X-Men. There's a lot of things happening. I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a lot of beloved characters who are making a comeback, and I like what they're doing. Some of it is a little weird, but I feel like the initial like reboot of the series, The House of X and Powers of X, are are worth reading. And then
Mm-hmm.
after that, it divides up into different series, and I feel like people can choose their own adventure. Like, who do they want to follow, kind of a
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um, there was another event that happened. I think it was like Swords of X or Ten of Swords. They use the X logo, and I'm not sure if it's like Ten of Swords or X of Swords, but that was also a very cool event. I liked that. And then, of course, the Hellfire Gala. I mean, we're coming up on the second one. I think it's supposed to drop this month. And I love the fashion aspect of it all. I love how people are getting new costumes. There's all these like new things happening. They're all on Krakoa. They're exporting things from Krakoa. They're kind of becoming their own nation. And then Judgment Day is going to happen.
Mm. Do we know
so
anything about that?
So it's basically the Eternals are this group of like semi-immortal beings who have always kind of policed Earth, like looking for excess deviations, any kind of things, like any kind of evolvement of species that would inhibit like the progression of mankind in their eyes. And it has been brought to their attention what like the X-Men are doing on Krakoa. And they're like, that feels like an excess deviation to me. So I think Judgment Day is going to pit the Eternals against the X-Men, and then I believe the Avengers are kind of stuck in the middle, like policing things. I want to say the story kicks off. Well, it kind of kicked off at Free Comic Book Day. There was the Judgment Day release. I want to say something happens at the Hellfire Gala this year to kick all that off. We will be discussing this in further detail, like issue by issue, on the podcast that I'm a part of, Power of X-Men. So if anybody wants to tune in and listen and read along with us, we're going to be diving into it very deeply. Some of my co-hosts are probably going to be throwing shade at each other. I feel like I'm a little more neutral. They put me on the Eternal side because, not a lot of people support the Eternals, and I've got love for them, but I also have love for X-Men.
Yeah,
So I feel like I'm Switzerland.
that's crazy. The Eternals are going to get mopped. You don't pick a fight with the X-Men. You never win that fight ever.
It's wild. Like I don't know. I don't think this event is going to unfold the way people think it does. I feel like there's going to be some other like bigger thing, maybe with the Celestial, especially like after seeing the Eternals movie, like Arsham the Judge. I feel like the judgment part is coming from him, and maybe, I'm just speculating that everybody's going to team up in the end and battle like a bigger baddie rather than each other.
Well, that was sort of the way Avengers versus X-Men played out. Like it was billed as like the throwdown of the century, Avengers versus X-Men, and very shortly in it became a very different story where the Phoenix Force had come back to Earth, and now it was sort of like kind of had to join forces to stop what was happening. So I could see that. I could see that. It always throws me off. I went through this thing where I was like I told you, I was really into the comics when I was a kid. When I was about 16, 17, I got out of it. And then when I was like 24, I decided to get back in. And it was like all I did was went down to the local comic book store, picked up like the 3 latest issues of X-Men, sat down. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, miss a little, miss a lot, or miss a lot, miss a bunch. I've since gone back because then of course I was coming in like just post like House of M.
Okay.
So I can remember, I'm like, okay, so there's Sentinels just hanging out on the X-Mansion lawn, and that's cool with everybody. And why is Sabretooth at the X-Mansion and just walking around like it's no big deal? Like, yeah, that took a little bit more to like reacclimate and I feel like I'm about to go through that again here as well. Did you read Avengers versus X-Men?
I didn't. That was around the time I was on hiatus.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, I've heard of it. I've Wikipedia'd a little bit about it.
Well, it just made me think of the Switzerland thing because we were talking about Avengers versus X-Men. That was the big discussion. Like, where does Wolverine go? Like, he's technically a part of both, and he found himself like constantly in the middle of the entire conflict that was going on because that's kind of tough to pick sides on that. So then the bigger question becomes, what are your impression of the X-Men movies?
Oh, well, I think so. The first one, what we got, it wasn't terrible. I understand that they had to kind of combine screen time for characters. Like Rogue kind of took the spot of Jubilee as the viewer's introduction into the X-Men series. I mean, Hugh Jackman played a phenomenal Wolverine. Like, that is like hands down amazing. I liked that they introduced Magneto as the big bad. I think, like, I don't think he wasn't as badass to me in the first one as he becomes later on. Like, I feel like, no shade to the actor, but he just felt like really old to me, and I thought that he should be maybe a little bit younger, a little bit more like I wanted to see like his strength, like his physical strength, I guess. I mean, everyone else I think did a great job. I loved all the little nods we got. I think there was like a Kitty Pryde one where she like runs through the wall or something to leave or enter class. Like that's kind of cute. Like it's those little nods for the real fans of the comics. I'm sorry, not the real fans, the fans of the comics.
Right.
There's no fake fans here.
Right.
um, I mean, that first movie was not bad. The second one, it was okay. It had good parts and bad parts to it. I think that was the one where we got Lady Deathstrike,
Yes.
I
Hmm.
believe. And I feel like her character was wasted
Yes.
in that.
Hmm.
Um, they didn't really develop like the rivalry between her and Wolverine because in the comics, I mean, like she's very honorable still. Like even though she doesn't like Wolverine because of what he did to her, I think he murdered her dad.
Hmm.
Like she went through all of like these not mutations, but genetic modifications
Augmentations.
just
Yeah.
to enact her revenge on him. And even when she does fight him, she doesn't like she doesn't cheat. Um, it's a good fight.
Hmm.
And in the movie, like she's taken out like really quickly and really easily. I felt like because she was mind controlled,
Yeah.
they kind of they just didn't do that character justice. Um, and then I mean, I was excited at the end, even though Jean died. The fact that they alluded to the Phoenix saga coming, I was so excited for that one. I'm like, oh my god, X3 is going to be about the Phoenix rising.
Hmm.
And then we got X3, and I was like, that was a lot of storyline that they put into a very small amount of time.
Hmm.
She turned evil super fast, and I feel like they left out a lot of the building up of the Phoenix Force, like being good at first, and then how she was manipulated into like turning evil, and then it that wasn't X3 was not the best of the franchise. Um, then X-Men First Class came, I think, after that, and it wasn't a bad movie. I feel like it could have not been an X-Men movie,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it still would have made sense. So that wasn't bad. I thought that one was pretty nice, and it was cool to see the X-Men as their younger selves, like the early
Hmm.
X-Men, like Beast before he became Beast, kind of
Yeah.
a thing. As those movies progressed, I think there was a heavy focus on Mystique, and that felt weird to me because she didn't seem like a main character, like in the X-Men franchise, as like a good guy. She was always depicted to me as more of a villainess or somebody that you couldn't like fully trust. So I think I think they tried to do an Age of Apocalypse movie, or is that what they called it? They
Yeah.
call it
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Age of Apocalypse. So I'm like, yeah, we're gonna get this dystopian future. Like that's gonna be great. Like I love Age of Apocalypse. And then we got something very different.
Hmm.
And then once again, they alluded to the Phoenix coming, and I'm like, didn't we already see this? Like,
Right.
hasn't this been done already? And then we got a very watered down version of I mean, we went straight into Dark Phoenix. Like we didn't even get a Phoenix. It was just
Right.
like, yep, she's evil.
Uh-huh.
And so, I mean, it got the X-Men on the big screen, and I think it's always good to see the characters you grew up with and characters you love on a big screen like that, and to have other people understand why you love them. So I
Hmm.
think the X-Men movies gave us that.
What'd you think of
Yeah.
Days of Future Past?
Oh, I forgot all about that one. Um, that one, gosh, I liked parts of it, and I saw
Hmm.
both versions. I saw the Rogue cut and the original one, um, and I I think it was almost like I liked how they rebooted the franchise. It was like a soft reboot of the
Hmm.
franchise, and then from there, it didn't really go the way I thought it would.
Hmm.
I liked that we were able to see the older characters and like the new characters in the future. That was cool. I liked all the little nods to the other movies. I was really sad when Bobby died. Like he finally became like this bad ass. Like he did like the whole slide thing, and then he dies. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, sucks.
That's altogether that's one of the, I have to admit, one of the unfortunate things that are casualties of the X-Men
Yeah,
movies, because when you talk about X-Men, it's not like the Fantastic Four. Like there are literally oodles and oodles of characters, and the amount of times they were like, oh, we need a character to do this, and they would just like snatch a card from the binder and be like, oh, put
yeah,
them in there. And you're like I even felt that way with Days of Future Past. It was like Bishop and Blank are such awesome characters who
yeah,
like just like, oh yeah, they're kind of here and they kind of have powers. Oh, they're dead, and it's like,
yeah,
oh
yeah.
man.
I think we got Warpath in there too. Is it
Yeah.
Warpath or Thunderbird? We got we got
Oh.
one of those. I think Boo Boo Stewart played them, but
Mm-hmm.
they got taken out really quick too. It was that character, like Blink, Bishop, and Iceman, who that whole fight scene in Days of Future Past was beautiful. Very
Mm-hmm.
sad and tragic, but like I remember like feeling the desperation with Blink trying to like create so many portals to get rid of those sentinels, and the sentinel just kept evolving and like figuring out what her power was, and you can just see like she's just desperate, and she can't keep up creating
Mm-hmm.
those portals fast enough, and then it's just I felt sadness.
Yeah.
So I mean the movies, I love seeing characters like that, like Blink from Age of Apocalypse,
Mm-hmm.
like oh my god, and a little bit in Generation X,
Yeah.
like yeah,
Little bit. Yeah, for
a little
sure.
bit.
The have you seen New Mutants? Is it
I
worth
did
it?
see New Mutants. You know, I didn't think it was as bad as critics said it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the New Mutants cast, like everyone they picked to play the main cast, was phenomenal. Um, and we got little introductions to everybody. Everyone had a great backstory. Everyone's powers were explained. Um, I think the only thing I didn't like was Cecilia Reyes was depicted as a bad guy, and that is definitely not who she is. I think they could have created a new character for that. They didn't need to turn an existing like good character into a villain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the whole like demon bear thing, I thought that was beautiful. Like that was that was crazy.
I haven't
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. And mainly because I like semi wrote it off because it had been
Hmm.
delayed so many times. There have been so many reshoots. And when it
Yeah.
came out, the initial reviews weren't good. But you're like the third person I've talked to in the last month who were like, it's actually not that bad. Like it's not gonna
Yeah.
blow your
Like
socks off, but it's a decent movie.
yeah, I think it stands alone great. It came out in theaters for that very brief time during COVID when they reopened, and so we wanted to support our local theater that's right across from us. And New Mutants was playing, and we're like, "Hey, let's go see it. Like, why not?" And it was great seeing it in the theater. I thought it was beautifully like well done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad.
Yeah. Well, there we
Yeah,
go. That seals the deal. You're like, if you're an X-Men nerd and you're telling me it's worth it, then okay, it's worth
yeah,
it. Yeah, fantastic. I've had this debate for the longest time, and I'm interested to see what you think about it. Being the huge Wolverine fan that I am, I thoroughly enjoy Hugh Jackman. I thoroughly enjoy Hugh Jackman's interpretation of Wolverine. I have yet to feel though on the movie screen I have seen Wolverine like tried and blue like, and I realize that's like a really really difficult character to cast for. Um, I'll never forget the funniest thing about that is when they were in pre-production for the first X-Men movie. I was working a job and one of my coworkers was Australian. He had emigrated here for the United States because he came here for Comic-Con and met his wife, who would become his wife.
oh my gosh,
So he was like, yeah, so he moved here and he was a huge X-Men nerd. He was a huge comic book nerd. Um, when they announced that Hugh Jackman was playing Wolverine, he was like visibly angry, like to the point of like shaking. Because prior to that, Hugh Jackman in Australia was known for doing cabaret shows and stuff like that.
yeah,
So
he
he
was
was
like
just like,
Broadway.
yeah, he was just like, are you kidding me? You have got to be kidding. But then the first time you see it on screen, you're like, okay, yeah, we can run with this. Um, But that's what I keep wondering now that, and we've been waiting a couple of years now that Disney's got the rights to X-Men back, is how and in what fashion they're going to work the X-Men into the MCU.
Yeah.
What do you have any thoughts on that? Has that crossed your mind at all?
It definitely has. I I think now that we're in the multiverse, there are opportunities to bring in these characters. Uh, I mean, I don't want to spoil like the Doctor Strange movie. Well, I mean, it's in the trailers, but
Yeah.
we get Professor X. So in that particular world, like we have mutants. So who's to say there's not another world out there where we get to see our X-Men, like to see even like the Fox versions, like maybe we get a few of them to
Mm-hmm.
kind of connect everything. But I mean, I'm okay with getting a completely new cast on board because I don't know where they would start unless they started, gosh, I don't know. I mean, they could start with the Krakoan age. That could that could work. Or I think we could get like maybe a different group, maybe like the Outback X-Men, because I feel like that is an entirely new cast. People won't have like preconceived notions of that team, except maybe Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody else on there, they haven't done much with those characters. So I think having like Outback or maybe like giant sized X-Men, like that team is also really great. I think bringing in the team at a new starting point, like I mean, I love Jean Grey, but maybe, because we've seen her so much, now is not the best time to introduce her.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I honestly feel like her character didn't get as much justice as it deserved in the movies either. It always bothers me
Yeah.
when they take a character who, especially from the comics, who is like really powerful, and then
Yeah.
they spend a movie or several movies with them being like all self-doubting and not really sure. And it's like, would you just let Jean be a badass? She's such a
Yeah.
badass. Um,
Yeah.
so you know what? This is, speaking of which, you are like, I'm going to consider you like the final judge on this because I got to get your
Okay.
take on it.
Okay.
A couple weeks ago, Brittany and I were doing a live stream, and Doctor Strange 2 had just come out, and that's what we were talking about. Is what all
Uh-huh.
happened and that, and somebody in the stream commented, "Who wins in a fight, Wanda Maximoff or Jean Grey?" And it's been bouncing around my head like a pinball for like a couple weeks now. So I wanted to get off the top of your head your take on that situation.
I feel like they are pretty even matched. Um, I think if it's Jean Grey with the Phoenix Force, I feel like she would have an advantage over Wanda. But if it's just Jean Grey, like pre Phoenix Force, I think it would be Wanda would
Mm-hmm.
come out on top. Because Wanda's powers are crazy. Like she can manipulate so much. So I don't know if Jean Grey without the Phoenix would be strong enough to fight that. But I feel like with the Phoenix Force, she would be, a literal force to reckon with.
I
I mean,
think,
it is very close. It's
yeah.
it's super close. Both strong, powerful, red-headed women.
I think you're right. I think Wanda has the edge unless Jean has the Phoenix Force and then she just mops the floor with her. Just like
Yeah,
looks at her like,
yeah,
why are you even here? Get out of here.
yeah. I mean, Phoenix takes stuff out like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
we've seen it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The other one, and I always find it interesting. I was having this. I literally got into an argument with a friend of mine. I remember like a year ago because he had made a mention about how Bobby Drake, Iceman, was like the most useless X-Men character of all time. And I'm like, you're aware of the fact that he's an Omega level mutant, right? And he got like a credit, like, no, no, no. He's all he can do is throw snowballs and ride around on ice slides and da 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 da. And I'm just like, I don't know how you combat that kind of idiocy. I told him, I said, dude, just get on the internet and do some research. And he came back to me 2 days later. He's like, oh my God, you're right. And I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, he's like up there.
he is.
Do you remember it was prior to Age of Apocalypse. It was the Phalanx Covenant storyline they did.
Yes, I'm very familiar.
Yes, yes. I believe in, I'm older, so things get muddled up there sometimes. That was
Hmm.
kind of like one of those cool Nexus moments with Bobby Drake, because Emma Frost had inhabited his body and is
Hmm.
able to do all kinds of crazy things with it he had never even thought were possible. And then after he got his own body back and started figuring stuff out, like all of a sudden his like ranking in terms of powerful beings, and not just in X-Men but in the
Hmm.
Marvel universe, like shot through the roof. And now he's just, at least when I left off anyway, he was such a fun character to read.
Yeah, yeah, he's still a great character. They just did I think there's a continuing series, an Iceman series on Marvel Unlimited that is only available on the app. And the things he's like doing in that comic, it's crazy. Like he is very strong,
Mm-hmm.
like very powerful. I think people should read that. Um, it's great. I love it.
Is yeah, odd question, because now I'm just like randomly this stuff is occurring to me. Is Gambit still around? Is he still a thing?
You know, he is around. I mean, he did splash across a Hellfire Gala like cover, variant cover recently. Um, looking very snackish in his outfit. I feel like him and Rogue had their miniseries like Mr. and Mrs. X, and then from there, like with the Krakoan era, they haven't been on the same team either. I I mean he's around. I just don't really know what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I think he got his highlight in Mr. and Mrs. X, and like honestly, the only thing that I can think of is that Hellfire Gala cover with him in his Hellfire outfit. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my god.
God, I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah.
So did you ever have gloves and you cut the finger and pinky and thumb off? So I feel like every X-Men fan probably did at some point in time.
I either don't wear gloves or I I get like the zipper part, like where I
Oh,
can take my
okay.
hand out kind of thing. I don't like to cut the fingers off. It feels weird to me. Plus, it feels a little, I don't know, maybe like dirty. I don't know. Because what if you touch things and then like it gets in your, like on your costume and I don't know. It's either gloves or no gloves for me.
Oh, okay. Because that was always the thing I remember from like the cartoon of the '90s. I remember as kids, we'd always, living here in the Midwest, it gets really cold, and we'd get those stretchy gloves, and you'd always cut the thumb and finger, forefinger, and pinky off, so you look like Gambit. You know,
Oh,
never mind
oh
the fact you'd
yes.
lose your digits in the blizzard, but it looked cool, so you were gonna do it.
It did. Or you get them those mitten convertibles, you know, where like it had the cut off fingers and then there was like this pullover piece so it turned it into like mittens.
Right,
Yeah. I
right.
remember those too.
Yes, those were really really cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the I I've been, I'm going back to the movie side of it here.
Mhm.
The I don't know what it is about it that bothers me, like in terms of bringing the X-Men into, because I feel like any way you bring them in isn't going to feel right. And I realize I'm nitpicking before they've even written anything. Marvel tends not to strike out when it comes to their movies. They tend to kind of know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to other people who said that, well, what, they do this Nexus event and it brings like mutants into our world. I'm like, well, that kind of changes the dynamic, because it's not like Xavier has spent decades in our time, like fighting for
Building this
mutant
team.
rights, building
Yeah.
this team and training them. All of a sudden it's like,
Hmm.
oh, hey, we're here visitors, but you've got mutants here, but don't worry, we're here to deal with it. you know Again, maybe that's just me nitpicking. I tend to feel like they're going to figure, what they had to do, they had to just start with Generation X.
I mean, I'm here for it. Like let's do it. Let's just do Generation X.
Right. the
Uh,
the only problem I would have with them doing a movie version of Generation X is that we found out from X-Men First Class that as much as I love the Banshee character, that doesn't translate overly well to film. And they struggled with it even in the animated series. I
yeah.
remember sometimes some of those episodes that get a little annoying. You'd be like, oh my God, shut up. Shut up. He's such a fantastic character, such an interesting character. But yeah, to have anybody on screen who's just screaming the entire time while they're flying, that's a little rough. But that would be a fun storyline, though.
have you seen the so Generation X had like a pilot back in the day, which I stayed up for to watch. I also have like the bootleg DVD of it. You can find it on YouTube if anybody wants to watch it, but there is like a pilot that didn't get picked up, so they just kind of released it as a movie of Generation X. And I think the actor in that one that plays Banshee, I feel as though he did a very good job. Him and the actress that played White Queen, phenomenal. Like
Mhm.
I could definitely see them return. Like if they want to reach out, if Marvel wants to reach out and get those actors, I'm here for that.
I'm gonna have to look
Yeah.
that one up. That was yeah, Emma Frost was another casualty of X-Men First Class. Like her character
Yeah.
did not get um what it deserved at all. Gosh, yeah, now I'm like interested. I didn't know never what year did they do that pilot? Do you know?
I want to say like 96. It was on Fox. Like I remember Fox did it, but if it's on YouTube, I remember it being like when I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I showed it to my husband recently and I'm like, oh my God, I don't
Hmm.
remember it being like this.
I
But
can
it's still really fun and campy. Not all of the characters made it into the show. They changed Husk to a character named Buff and changed her powers.
hmm.
And then they changed Chamber into a character named Refrax and also changed his powers. So,
Well, Chamber for who he is and the way he looked in the comics, unless you had a good special effects budget, that'd be a really tough one. It would look amazing if you
yeah.
did it right, but that'd be a
Yes.
tough one to do. Yeah,
Mhm.
that was Chris Bacalo did that, didn't he? The Generation X run.
He did. He
Yeah,
did.
that guy's a god.
Yeah.
That man's an
I
absolute
know.
god.
Oh my
I
God.
grew up comic wise. Like I said, I'm like, the Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane and
Mhm.
that style. And I remember the first time I picked up a Chris Bacalo book. It was good, but it was so different. It was
Yeah.
so insanely different. And still to
Yeah.
this day, I think he's done some of my favorite covers of all time. He's just such a phenomenal. I love following him on Instagram and just the random stuff that he posts up there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I posted in my Insta stories that one with that he did with Mystique and Iceman on the cover.
Yes.
Oh, that was such a
The one where
great
they're
cover.
kissing? That one?
Yes.
Oh my God,
Yes.
I know. So good.
Absolutely love that one. It was it's right up there. The yeah, now I'm thinking about it, it's probably not because I think it was when if I understand it was during the period that you were kind of like on comic sabbatical that we go through. But when they did the X-Force run where the team was Wolverine and X-23 and Warpath and Archangel and Wolfsbane, I want to say it wasn't a long run. It was maybe like 12 issues or something like that.
Yeah.
But I loved it. It was such a brutal book. Like it was not a PG rated book. And like to have
Mm-mm.
like Wolverine and X-23 team together. And I still remember like one of my favorite covers that Clayton Crane did, who's a phenomenal artist. Where they're standing there and there's like a fire and like so you see them but you also see partially silhouettes on the side of Wolverine you can literally see like where the flesh has gone around his ribs and he's just standing there like flexing like a total BA and you're just like oh my God, that is so good. That is so good.
Oh.
Oh yeah, I've got my X-23 statue up here.
Oh heck yeah.
This one I'm gonna see if I can get it down without knocking anything over. I absolutely this took me 10 years to get. Hopefully I don't drop and break it. And that's because when they did this, I'll get it in front so people can see. They only did 500 of these
Oh,
altogether.
so limited.
Yeah,
Limited.
it was a very limited. It was one of those that when they put it out, I want to say they all sold out within like 15 minutes because they only released it online. And
Yeah.
that took me over 10 years of scouting eBay to find one. And now I've got it. It's number 398 of 500. And
Oh wow.
anyway,
I
yeah.
mean, look at her though. She looks amazing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can see this thing. It is freaking massive. It's this big, humongous statue.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, those things are so cool. And now that I'm into 3D printing, I just start making my own. I'm not going to get it down with that Wolverine up behind. I've got another X-23 up there that's printed anyway. So as we're getting down towards the end here, but I absolutely have to ask before we go out. Tell everybody else about the podcast that you do.
Oh, well, it's not my podcast. It was created by my friend Paul during the pandemic as a way for him to just kind of like deal with things and connect to people. And he's built this wonderful community of X-Men stans, and I think he had reached out to have me on as a guest, and we talked about Generation X because we're around the same age and we were into the same thing. Like we love Generation X, like that's our jam. And he just had me on like a few more times and he said that he likes my vibe. And so now I'm a like guest co-host and we like to team up and do like events. We've talked about premieres. He came out to LA and at that time I had gotten an invite to the Hawkeye premiere and I'm like, you want to go with me? Like you want to just like go see this? And so we did it and he put it on the podcast. We talked about it. Um, and then he just like brought me on and so now I jump on when there's I think the last episode I did was we discussed the Love and Thunder trailer.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, like just Easter eggs and like what our expectations are. And coming up, we are going to do the whole like Judgment Day series. Like it's going
Hmm.
to be myself, his other co-host, Mr. Scott Free, and then another friend, Namor Cosplay. So like myself and Namor Cosplay, we're on the Eternal side. It's just where I got put. I love both. I love both. Uh, and then Scott and Paul will be on the X-Men side. And then we have the Avengers in there too, but nobody's really like for the Avengers. So I hope we all can remain like biased and
Right.
not get too crazy.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that's the podcast that I am currently like guest co-hosting. Paul and myself are also doing a panel at San Diego Comic Con. We are hosting the 30th anniversary of X-Men the Animated Series,
Oh my
and
God,
we've
30
got
years.
yeah, I
Oh
know
my
it's
God.
crazy. It's crazy. We've got Larry Houston, the producer. We've got the writers, Eric and Julia Leewald, and we have Dan Biesenmeyer, one of the storyboard artists for X-Men the Animated Series. He also did the um, the box art for those Hasbro VHS X-Men figures
Mm.
that just came out. Yeah, I don't think I have one near me, but yeah, he's done the cover art for all of those.
Hmm.
So
That is awesome.
yeah.
Whoa, cool. Gosh, that's been the greatest thing in the world since that's all been up on Disney Plus. Like I find
Hmm.
myself like taking Saturdays where I'm just like binging the crap out of it and like
Yes.
going through the memories. My wife and I were talking about this yesterday because she's a huge nerd too, and she's a few years younger than I am, and we were just talking about X-Men and our history of loving the X-Men.
Hmm.
And I'll tell her, I told her, I said the reason why I know I'm certifiable is I was a teenager and they did. I remember when they did the Dark Phoenix saga, they actually ran it at prime time on
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
Saturday
we
or
did.
Sunday night, I remember.
Hmm.
Um, and I was watching an episode, and I'm a teenage boy. Being a teenage boy, I've got my girlfriend over. My parents aren't home. We're making out on the couch, and Fox began running a promo for the Dark Phoenix saga, and I literally went, "No way!" and sat up and completely ignored her and was totally glued to the TV. I'm like, "They're doing Dark Phoenix? Oh my god!" I think we broke up 5 minutes later, but
She wasn't the one. She wasn't the
no,
one.
no, no, she was not the one. You know, that would have been the ultimate litmus test. If she'd have gone, "Oh my God, no way," too, then it might have been. But no,
Yeah.
no, no. But anyway, well, we're getting up against the clock. I love following you on Instagram, and
Oh, thank
I
you.
look forward to hearing all that you folks are going to cover on the podcast because that means I got to get down to the comic book store now and start picking up some comics before we get to Judgment
Yes.
Day. Is that
Yes.
dropping
Or you could
really
just
soon
listen to
too?
us talk about it. I
That's
mean,
true. That is very, very true. Well, all right. Well, I'm going to let you go. Anything you want to say on the way out?
um, I mean, I don't have a tagline or anything, but if you want to follow, I have a second Instagram account if anybody wants to follow it. Adventures in Geekdom, where my husband and myself chronicle our toy collecting and comic book hunting adventures. As you can see, we are avid collectors of memorabilia. So we like to kind of put out on there, like, things we're finding in the wild, helping out our toy hunting community, just things that we're into. My regular Instagram account is just, me doing my cosplay stuff. The podcast Power of X is a really fun like podcast to follow. We're trying to cover more of these events like Judgment Day. We were doing um, Age of Apocalypse, but that's like on a hiatus for Judgment Day. And then there's a couple other things that we talk about. We've done like Marvel Legends episodes. We're trying to do more of that. And yeah, and then maybe come out to San Diego if anybody's there. We're going to have a panel. Right now it's on Saturday, I believe, tentatively. But yeah, come to our panel, come say hi. If you find me, I have stickers. I give out stickers. I have like Jean Grey stickers. Yeah.
That is cool. When is San Diego Comic-Con this year?
I believe it starts on Wednesday's preview night. I believe. Let me just double check my calendar really quick. I want to say the 22nd. Oh, I'm sorry. So the 20th, Wednesday the 20th of July is preview night, and then it runs all the way through Sunday the 24th.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, there's lots of things to do out there if you don't have a ticket. Like they set up, they have a special name for it. I can't remember, but they just have like booths and activities that you can do if you don't have a badge to get in. They do stuff at Petco Park, and they do stuff at like the back dock area. They had like an IDW yacht or something.
Oh wow.
There was a Adult Swim section. They had like a lot of cool like Rick and Morty stuff from Adult Swim, like the Rickmobile and other franchises from Cartoon Network's Adult Swim. They do a lot of things in the gas lamp area, and there's always after parties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is really cool. Do you ever make it to WonderCon?
I do. I just made it to the last one. I had a panel there as well. Went to like the X-Men meetup. I took over for our podcast Instagram and just like chronicled like everything I did, like dropped off books at the CGC booth, like getting a comic signed by Mike Mayhew, going to the Spider-Verse meetup, kind of a thing. So yeah, there's lots to do. It's so fun.
That is really awesome. Next year I'm going to my first one, and I'm so excited for it. So
oh my gosh,
I
feel like you're gonna love it.
I think I will.
Yeah.
And I had known about it, but from some of the people I follow and from the last one, all the people that I follow and the stuff they were posting, like I was like vicariously living through like 15 people the entire weekend. And I just decided, like, oh, next year I got to go. I got to find a way to go 100%. Yeah. So that's in the plan, man. So. Oh,
man. Well, let me know if you make it. Let's like link up and, we'll do something. We'll get a beer. I don't know if you're a drinker. We'll get a beer.
Yeah, if you're offering, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, once again, thank you so much, Michelle. Gonna keep following, and yeah, definitely hope we get to talk again in the future.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to come back anytime.
All right. Well, thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out. And thanks to Brittany for the recommendation.
She gets the thumbs up. She gets the alley-oop on this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a good one.
Yeah, you too, James. Thank you.
You bet. All right, folks. So that was the episode with Michelle. I hope you got your fix of X-Men. If you didn't, be sure and follow her on Instagram at Michelle Waffle-Otero. And I want to thank all of you. This ride has been really great. Everybody's been really wonderful. This is a fantastic community to be in. I want to thank again all of you for liking, sharing, subscribing, all those good things. Before I get out of here, I want to say I love all of you. Hope you take care of each other, and we'll talk to you next time.